Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. Mark Seidenspinner ducked behind a stack of cargo containers, his heart pounding against his ribs like a prisoner desperate for escape. The footsteps of the Orion Syndicate's thugs echoed through the narrow passageway of Caravan 5's lower decks. "He went this way," a gravelly voice shouted. 30,000 credits says the boss wants his fingers first." Mark pressed himself harder against the cold metal, hoping the dim lighting of the station's underbelly would keep him hidden. Sweat trickled down his temple, disappearing into his patchy beard. He'd always considered the beard his one redeeming feature. "Fat lot of good it's doing me now," he muttered. 3 days ago, life had been merely disappointing. Now it was actively trying to kill him. His mind flashed back to Zeno's bar, where his so-called friend Daryl had talked him into the easiest game of cards you'll ever play. "These Vesperians can't bluff to save their lives," Daryl had said, slapping Mark's back. "Their facial tentacles twitch when they lie. It's basic biology." What Daryl hadn't mentioned was that Vesperians had evolved past that particular tell 2 centuries ago. Now, Mark was 30 grand in debt to the most dangerous syndicate on the station, with nothing to show for it but the clothes on his back and the terror flooding his veins. The heavy footsteps grew louder. Mark spotted a narrow gap between 2 merchant stalls and lunged for it, slipping into the shadowy passage that led deeper into Caravan 5's infamous black market. The black market existed in a jurisdictional blind spot, technically illegal but tolerated by station authorities who enjoyed the occasional untraceable luxury themselves. The air here was thick with competing scents: exotic spices, ship fuel, illegal pharmaceuticals, and the distinct musk of too many species crammed into too little space. Mark weaved through the crowd, bumping shoulders with a hulking Rigelian who growled in response. A digital sign overhead flickered between languages, eventually settling on English: "Authentic Earth artifacts. Cheap." "Sorry," Mark mumbled, ducking past a merchant selling what appeared to be 20th century toasters labeled as "Ancient Earth Quantum Resequencers." His foot caught on something soft and he stumbled forward, nearly falling flat on his face. When he looked down, he found himself face to face with an unusual sight: a small stall tucked away in an alcove, manned by a peculiar woman with vibrant purple skin. Unlike the 4-eyed, tentacle-haired creature he'd expected based on the synopsis, this woman appeared remarkably human, save for her striking purple complexion. Her white hair was elegantly coiffed, and despite her apparent age, her face retained a distinct beauty, with wise eyes that sparkled with mischief. She sat behind a modest counter displaying various baked goods. "Well, hello there, handsome," she said, her voice carrying a melodic lilt that didn't match any accent Mark recognized. "You look like you're having quite the day." Mark glanced over his shoulder. The thugs had disappeared into the crowd, but they'd be back. They always came back. "You could say that," he replied, trying to catch his breath. "I'm just passing through." The woman tilted her head, studying him with unsettling intensity. "No, I don't think you are." She smiled, revealing teeth that were just a shade too white to be natural. "I think you're exactly where you need to be. I'm Nana Lewindham." "Mark," he replied automatically, then winced at his stupidity. Giving his real name while on the run wasn't his brightest move. "Mark," Nana repeated, as though sampling the taste of his name. "Tell me, Mark, when was the last time you ate something?" His stomach answered with an embarrassing growl. Between fleeing his apartment before the thugs arrived and navigating the station's lower levels, food had been the last thing on his mind. "That's what I thought," Nana said with a knowing nod. She reached beneath her counter and produced a simple cookie. It looked entirely ordinary, golden brown with a slight crispness at the edges. "Try this, dear. It will bring you luck." Mark eyed the cookie suspiciously. "What's in it?" "Flour, butter, sugar," Nana shrugged. "The usual ingredients, plus a pinch of something special." She winked. "It's free of charge." "Nothing's free on Caravan 5, Mark replied. But his stomach growled again, louder this time. Nana pushed the cookie toward him. "Consider it an investment in your future." Before Mark could respond, a commotion erupted nearby. The Orion thugs had reappeared, shoving shoppers aside as they scanned the market. One of them pointed in Mark's direction. "There he is!" Without thinking, Mark grabbed the cookie and shoved it into his mouth, chewing quickly. It was surprisingly good, buttery with hints of vanilla and something he couldn't quite place. He swallowed just as the first thug reached for his stunner. "Thanks for the cookie, but I've gotta—" Nana's expression transformed from grandmotherly charm to triumphant glee. She clapped her hands together. "Oh my! You ate it! It's done then! You're now officially engaged to my granddaughter." Mark froze mid-turn. "I'm what now?" The thug behind him also paused, clearly thrown by this unexpected declaration. Nana rose from her seat, her diminutive frame somehow commanding attention. "Everyone!" she called out, her voice carrying through the market with surprising volume. "Witness, this Earthman has partaken of the La Wyndham cookie of binding. He is now betrothed to the House of La Wyndham." The market fell silent. Even the constantly haggling merchant stopped mid-barter to stare. "Lady," Mark hissed, "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm about to be—" The nearest thug grabbed Mark's shoulder, spinning him around. "You're coming with— Grandmother!" The shout cut through the market like a plasma blade. The crowd parted, revealing a vision that made Mark's jaw drop. A tall woman with luminous purple skin stalked toward them, her movements fluid and powerful. Her silver hair cascaded down her back like liquid mercury, contrasting spectacularly with her vibrant green eyes that blazed with fury. She was dressed in a form-fitting outfit that accentuated curves in all the right places, making Mark momentarily forget the gun pointed at his head. "You've got to be kidding me," she said, her attention focused entirely on Nana. "Tell me you didn't actually do this." The thug, momentarily distracted by the newcomer's appearance, loosened his grip on Mark's collar. "What's going on here?" Nana beamed. "Tina, darling, meet your future husband. He just accepted the cookie of binding." Tina La Wyndham, for that's who she clearly was, closed her eyes and took a deep breath that did interesting things to her already impressive chest. When she opened them again, her gaze settled on Mark with the intensity of a laser sight. "You," she said, pointing one elegant finger at him, "did you knowingly eat my grandmother's cookie?" I was hungry," Mark stammered, feeling like he'd stepped into some bizarre dream. "And these guys were about to shoot me, and she said it would bring me luck, and—" "It's valid," Nana declared. "He consumed it willingly, with witnesses present." The thug who'd been about to abduct Mark looked between him and Tina with growing confusion. "Is this guy under the protection of House La Wyndham?" Tina's jaw clenched so hard Mark thought he could hear her teeth grinding. "Apparently," she said through gritted teeth, "he is." The thug immediately released Mark and stepped back, hands raised. "No disrespect intended to House La Wyndham. We didn't know he was affiliated." "He wasn't," Tina said sharply, "until about 30 seconds ago." Mark rubbed his neck where the thug's grip had left a mark. "Would someone please explain what's happening?" "You," Tina said, jabbing her finger at his chest, "just agreed to marry me by eating my grandmother's ceremonial cookie of binding. In my culture, that's as good as signed marriage papers." Mark blinked. "But I didn't know." "Irrelevant," Nana interjected cheerfully. "Ignorance of the cookie doesn't invalidate the binding." The lead thug cleared his throat. "So, about the 30,000 credits he owes the Orion Syndicate." Tina shot him a glare so withering that the man physically recoiled. "Send the bill to House La Wyndham. Now get out of my sight before I forget my diplomatic training." The thugs retreated with remarkable speed for their size. Thank you," Mark said, relief washing over him. "I don't know why you did that, but—" "Don't thank me," Tina snapped. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because my grandmother just entangled our house in a binding contract with—" She looked him up and down with obvious disdain. "Whatever you are." "I'm a chef," Mark said defensively. "Well, line cook, at Dockside Diner, on the upper commercial ring." Tina rolled her eyes. "Fantastic. Not only am I suddenly engaged to an Earthman, but he's a line cook from the upper ring with gambling debts." "Hey, I'm standing right here," Mark protested. Unfortunately, Tina replied. Nana, watching this exchange with evident delight, placed a wrinkled purple hand on each of their arms. Such chemistry already. Come, we must go somewhere more private to discuss the details of your engagement. There's nothing to discuss, Tina insisted. We're going to find a way to undo this. Nana's expression turned serious for the first time. You know that's not possible, dear. The cookie of binding can only be undone by fulfilling its purpose or by death. And you wouldn't want your new fiancé to die, would you? She patted Mark's cheek with surprising affection. He has such a nice face. Mark swallowed hard. Death? She's exaggerating, Tina said quickly, though her expression suggested otherwise. But we do need to get out of public view. Now. She grabbed Mark's wrist, her grip surprisingly strong, and began pulling him through the market. Nana followed, humming contentedly to herself. Where are we going? Mark asked, struggling to keep up with Tina's purposeful stride. My ship, she replied curtly. It's not safe for you here anymore. Because of the Orion Syndicate? But you paid them off. Tina laughed, a sound both musical and bitter. The Orions are the least of your problems now. Do you have any idea who I am? Besides my apparent fiancé, Mark quipped, the absurdity of the situation finally catching up to him. I am Tina LaWyndham, heir to the LaWyndham dynasty, third in line to the Proxima Centauri consensus and diplomatic ambassador to the Earth Alliance. She stopped abruptly, causing Mark to nearly crash into her. And thanks to my meddling grandmother, half the station now thinks I'm engaged to a human line cook with a gambling problem. When you put it that way, it does sound bad, Mark admitted. Bad? Tina's green eyes widened. It's catastrophic. Do you know how many political factions have been trying to forge alliances with my family through marriage? How many rival houses will see you as a threat to their ambitions? As if on cue, Mark's personal comm unit chimed with an incoming message. The display showed an unfamiliar symbol, a stylized trident wrapped in flames. What's that? Tina asked, eyeing the symbol. No idea, Mark replied, tapping the display to read the message. A holographic projection appeared above his wrist. Mark Seidenspinner, your engagement to the L.A. Wyndham heir is unacceptable. House Paraxis demands your immediate surrender or face elimination. You have 1 hour to respond. Mark stared at the message, then at Tina, then at Nana, who was busy examining a display of exotic fruits at a nearby stall. Is this normal where you come from? He asked weakly. More or less, Tina admitted. House Pyraxis has been trying to arrange a marriage alliance with my family for decades. They're not going to take this well. By not take this well, you mean? They'll try to kill you, Tina said bluntly. Probably in a way that sends a message to others not to interfere with their plans. Mark's legs suddenly felt wobbly. All because I ate a cookie? All because you ate my grandmother's cookie, Tina corrected. There's a difference. Nana rejoined them carrying a bag of what appeared to be blue star-shaped fruits. Did I hear someone mention House Pyraxis? Those dreadful boars. Their cookies are terrible, all show and no substance. Grandmother, Tina said through clenched teeth, this isn't about cookies anymore. Mark's life is in danger because of your meddling. Nonsense, Nana replied with a dismissive wave. He's under your protection now. You're perfectly capable of keeping him safe. That's not the point. Isn't it, though? Nana's eyes twinkled as she looked between them. He needs protection. You need a consort who won't try to usurp your position. It's a perfect match. I do not need a consort, Tina insisted. The council disagrees, Nana countered. They've been pressuring you to choose for years. Now the choice has been made. Mark raised his hand tentatively. Don't I get a say in this? No, both women replied simultaneously. A subtle vibration shook the deck beneath their feet. The station's public address system crackled to life. Attention, all residents and visitors. Security alert level Delta now in effect. Please return to your assigned quarters or berths until further notice. Tina cursed in a language Mark's translator didn't recognize. That's a diplomatic incident alert. Someone's already making moves. She grabbed Mark's arm again. We need to get to my ship now. They hurried through increasingly deserted corridors, the station's emergency lighting casting everything in an eerie red glow. Mark struggled to process the rapid shift in his circumstances, from desperate fugitive to political pawn in less than an hour. Here, Tina said finally, stopping before a sleek airlock emblazoned with an elegant symbol that matched the jewelry she wore. Authorization: Tina Lawindham, Protocol 793. The airlock hissed open, revealing a glimpse of a ship interior that made Mark's jaw drop. It wasn't the utilitarian transport he'd expected, but something that resembled a luxury yacht crossed with a military vessel. "Get in," Tina ordered, practically shoving him through the opening. Nana followed at a more leisurely pace, pausing to pat her granddaughter's cheek. "You'll thank me for this someday, dear." "I'll kill you for this someday, dear," Tina retorted, but there was no real venom in her voice. As the airlock sealed behind them, Mark found himself standing in a spacious entryway. The ship's interior was a stark contrast to the grimy station corridors, all clean lines and elegant curves, with materials that seemed to glow from within. "Welcome to the Stellar Grace," Tina said, her voice softening slightly as she moved past him to activate a control panel. "My personal vessel, and now, apparently, your sanctuary." "It's beautiful," Mark said honestly. For the first time, Tina's expression relaxed into something approaching a smile. "Yes, it is." The moment passed quickly as she returned to business. "You'll stay in the guest quarters until we figure out how to handle this situation." The ship's systems hummed to life around them. Displays illuminated, showing external views of the docking bay and status reports in a script Mark couldn't read. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Away from Caravan 5, Tina replied. "Beyond that, I haven't decided." Nana settled herself comfortably in a curved chair that seemed to adjust to her form. "I suggest Proxima Centauri. The family should meet Mark properly before the formal announcement." "There won't be an announcement," Tina insisted. "This engagement isn't real." "The Cookie of Binding disagrees," Nana said serenely, "as will the council." A soft chime interrupted their argument. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing a stern-faced purple-skinned man wearing ornate garments. "Tina," the man said, his tone formal, "is it true? Have you taken a consort?" Tina glanced at Mark, then back at the hologram. "It's complicated, Uncle Varix." "Uncomplicated," Varix demanded. "House Pyraxis has filed a formal protest with the council. They're claiming breach of diplomatic protocol and threatening to withdraw from the consensus." "That's ridiculous," Tina replied. "I made no promises to House Pyraxis." "But you did accept their petition for consideration," Varix countered, "along with petitions from 6 other houses. Now I'm receiving reports that you've bound yourself to, human?" His gaze shifted to Mark, who resisted the urge to hide behind the nearest piece of furniture. "It wasn't my idea," Tina said, shooting a glare at Nana, who was pretending to be deeply interested in a bowl of decorative stones. Varix's eyes widened as he noticed the elderly woman. "Nana, is that you behind this?" "Hello, Varix dear," Nana replied cheerfully. "Yes, I found Tina a wonderful consort. Isn't that splendid?" Varix closed his eyes briefly as though seeking patience. "Nana, the political repercussions of this impulsive action are exactly what our house needs," Nana interrupted. "Too long have we been caught in the web of traditional alliances. It's time for fresh blood." Mark winced at her choice of words. "The council is demanding an explanation," Varix continued, "and House Pyraxis has already dispatched representatives to assess the situation." "Assassins, you mean?" Tina said flatly. I didn't say that, Varix replied carefully, but I would suggest you make yourselves scarce until I can calm the situation. We're leaving now, Tina assured him. Request emergency clearance for the Stellar Grace. Granted, Varix said. And Tina, be careful. If this binding is legitimate, your consort is now a target for every ambitious house in the consensus. The hologram flickered out, leaving an uncomfortable silence in its wake. Did he just call me a target? Mark asked. Don't worry, dear, Nana patted his arm. Tina will protect you. After all, you're her man now. Tina's eyes narrowed dangerously. Grandmother, when this is over, you and I are going to have a very long talk about boundaries and political interference. Looking forward to it, darling, Nana replied with a serene smile. Now, shouldn't we be escaping? As if in response, a warning klaxon sounded. The external cameras showed a sleek black vessel approaching their docking bay. House Pyraxis, Tina muttered. They don't waste time. She slid into the pilot's seat and her fingers flew over the controls. Mark, strap in. This departure is going to be rough. Mark fumbled with the harness of the nearest seat. Is this really happening? All because of a cookie? Welcome to interstellar politics, Tina replied as the ship's engines roared to life, where marriages forge alliances, break treaties, and occasionally start wars. And I thought I had problems with the Orion Syndicate, Mark muttered. As the Stellar Grace disengaged from the docking clamps, the black vessel opened fire, energy bolts sizzling past their viewport. Hold tight, Tina called out, executing a maneuver that sent the ship spinning away from the station. The artificial gravity compensated, but Mark still felt his stomach lurch. I'm going to die because of a cookie, he groaned. Nana, somehow maintaining perfect composure despite the evasive maneuvers, smiled at him. Or you'll live because of one. It's all a matter of perspective, dear. The Stellar Grace burst free of Caravan 5's docking ring, accelerating rapidly as Tina plotted a course away from the pursuing vessel. Mark looked back at the receding space station, at his former life, his job at the diner, his tiny apartment, his twice-escaped robot vacuum cleaner, and realized that, cookie or not, nothing would ever be the same again. By the way, he said, turning to Tina as she piloted them through a dizzying series of evasive maneuvers, what exactly does being your consort entail? Tina's green eyes flashed with a mixture of irritation and something else he couldn't quite identify. Let's focus on keeping you alive first. We can discuss consort duties, if we survive. When we survive, Nana corrected cheerfully. I have a good feeling about this match. As energy bolts from the pursuing ship lit up space around them, Mark wondered what kind of luck that cookie was supposed to bring, and whether he'd live long enough to find out. The Stellar Grace tumbled through space, energy bolts from the pursuing Pyraxis vessel streaking past them in vibrant purple arcs. Mark clutched his seat restraints, knuckles white as Tina executed another stomach-churning, evasive maneuver. Can't this thing go any faster? He yelled over the blaring alarms. Not without tearing us apart, Tina replied through gritted teeth, her purple fingers dancing across the controls. Their ship is a Pyraxis interceptor, military grade. Mine's a diplomatic vessel with added defenses. Wonderful, Mark muttered. I've upgraded from gambling debt to interstellar warfare. A direct hit rocked the ship, sending sparks cascading from an overhead panel. Nana, somehow maintaining perfect posture despite the chaos, sighed as if merely inconvenienced by poor weather. Tina, dear, perhaps it's time to show your fiancé what House La Wyndham is truly capable of. Tina shot her grandmother a withering glare. This isn't the time for... Another blast struck them, harder this time. Status displays flashed red across the cockpit. Shield integrity at 43%, announced the ship's AI in a pleasant female voice. Hull breach detected in Cargo Bay 3. Emergency containment activated. Fine, Tina snapped, flipping a series of switches overhead. Mark, take the secondary controls. I don't know how to fly a spaceship, Mark protested. You don't need to fly it. Just hold this position. She grabbed his hand and placed it on what looked like a crystalline joystick. Don't let go, no matter what happens. The moment his fingers closed around the control, it pulsed with warm light. The ship's interior illumination shifted to a deeper purple, and Mark felt a subtle vibration travel up his arm. What's happening? He asked, watching in fascination as the controls seemed to meld with his palm. Ship-to-pilot neural link, Tina explained, rising from her seat. It'll keep us on course while I deal with our pursuers. She strode toward the rear of the cockpit and pressed her hand against a seemingly ordinary wall panel. It slid open to reveal a small chamber containing what appeared to be a sleek silver rifle. You're going to shoot at them? Mark asked incredulously. In space? Tina's lips curled into something between a smile and a snarl. Not exactly. She grabbed the rifle and headed toward the airlock. Before Mark could protest further, Nana moved to take Tina's vacated pilot seat. Don't worry, dear, she said, patting his arm. Tina has done this many times. House Lawindham's daughters are trained as both diplomats and warriors, the dual path of our people. That doesn't explain why she's going outside during a space battle. The ship lurched again, and Mark instinctively tightened his grip on the control stick. To his surprise, the ship responded by stabilizing, the neural link translating his desire for stability into actual course corrections. Fascinating, isn't it? Nana observed. The ship recognizes you already. External airlock cycle initiated, the ship's AI announced. Vacuum exposure imminent. Mark watched in horror as one of the external camera feeds showed Tina stepping into the airlock wearing nothing but her regular clothing. No spacesuit, no helmet, no protection whatsoever against the freezing vacuum of space. She'll die, he cried, trying to rise from his seat only to discover the neural link had somehow locked him in place. Oh, I assure you she won't, Nana replied calmly. Watch. The outer airlock door slid open, and instead of being violently expelled into space as Mark expected, Tina calmly stepped out onto the hull of the ship. A faint purple aura surrounded her body, and her silver hair flowed behind her as if she were underwater rather than in vacuum. She raised the rifle, took aim at the pursuing vessel, and fired. Instead of a laser blast or projectile, a blinding arc of energy connected Tina's weapon to the Paraxis ship. The enemy vessel shuddered, its engine sputtering before failing completely. What the hell? Mark whispered, transfixed by the sight. Energy manipulation, Nana explained proudly. A gift of our people. Tina is particularly skilled at it. Tina fired again, this time targeting the Pyraxis ship's weapons array. The energy beam sliced through their defenses like they were made of paper. With a final shot, she disabled their communications dish. Enemy vessel neutralized, the AI announced, setting course for Rendezvous Point Alpha. Tina gracefully made her way back to the airlock, the purple aura still surrounding her body. When she re-entered the cockpit moments later, not a hair was out of place. That, she announced, replacing the rifle in its chamber, should buy us some time. Mark stared at her in disbelief. You were just in space, without a suit. Tina rolled her eyes. Obviously. But that's impossible. For humans, perhaps. She reclaimed her pilot seat from Nana, who yielded it with a knowing smile. You can let go of the control now. Mark released his grip, flexing his fingers to dispel the lingering sensation of connection with the ship. What are you people? We're Vindhara, Tina replied, as if that explained everything. Seeing his confusion, she elaborated. Our species evolved on a planet with an electromagnetic field 10 times stronger than Earth's. We developed the ability to manipulate energy fields, including those that protect us from environmental extremes. Like the vacuum of space, Mark said slowly. Exactly, though it does drain our energy reserves quickly. I couldn't have stayed out there much longer. She checked the navigation display. We're heading to a secure location where we can regroup. The Pyraxis won't be able to track us once we enter hyperspace. And then what? Tina's expression hardened. Then we figure out how to get you out of this mess without starting an interstellar incident. Or, Nana interjected cheerfully, how to prepare for the formal engagement announcement. There will be no formal announcement, Tina snapped. The council will demand one, Nana replied serenely, especially now that House Pyraxis has made an open move against your consort. He's not my consort. The cookie disagrees, Nana said with a wink at Mark. Mark felt like his head might explode. Can someone please explain to me what this cookie actually did, besides nearly get me killed? Tina sighed deeply. The cookie of binding is an ancient tradition in our culture. It contains a microscopic quantity of a substance called nexate, a psychoactive compound that creates a neural link between the giver and the recipient. A neural link? Mark repeated, suddenly feeling violated. You mean you're in my head now? Not exactly, Tina said, looking uncomfortable for the first time. It's more subtle than that. The link allows for empathic awareness. I can sense extreme emotions from you, and theoretically, you could sense mine with practice. Theoretically? Humans haven't traditionally shown much sensitivity to nexate. It's surprising you're even alive, actually. Most non-Vindara who consume it experience unpleasant side effects. Like death, Nana added helpfully. Mark slumped in his seat. Great. So I ate an alien drug that should have killed me, accidentally got engaged to a space princess who can walk in vacuum, and now I'm being hunted by her rejected suitors. Did I miss anything? You forgot the empathic bond, Nana reminded him. Right. That too. The ship shuddered as it entered hyperspace, the stars outside the viewport stretching into lines of light. Tina set the autopilot and rose from her seat. You should rest, she told Mark. We have 12 hours before we reach the safe house. I'll show you to the guest quarters. Mark followed her through the elegant corridors of the ship, trying not to stare at the way her form-fitting outfit accentuated every curve. If she could sense his emotions, she gave no indication of it. Here, she said, stopping before a doorway that slid open at her approach. There's a sonic shower, clean clothes in the refresher, and the bed adjusts to your physiology. Mark peered into the room, which was more luxurious than any hotel he'd ever stayed in. Thanks. I do smell like fear and poor life choices. The corner of Tina's mouth twitched upward, almost a smile. Get some rest. We'll talk more later. As she turned to leave, Mark caught her wrist. Wait, that thing you did out there, with the energy field and the rifle, that was incredible. Something flickered in her green eyes, surprise perhaps at the genuine admiration in his voice. It's just what we do, she said, but her tone had softened. Well, it saved our lives, so thank you. She nodded once and pulled her wrist free. Sleep well, Mark. Mark woke to the sound of alarms blaring. He bolted upright, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The luxury guest quarters came back into focus as the ship's AI announced, Proximity alert, unknown vessel approaching. He stumbled out of bed and fumbled with the clean clothes Tina had left for him, a simple black jumpsuit that adjusted to his form as he pulled it on. The material felt strange against his skin, simultaneously soft and resilient. The door to his quarters slid open as he approached, and he rushed toward the cockpit. Before he could reach it, a tremendous impact rocked the ship, sending him sprawling against the corridor wall. Tina, he called out, regaining his footing. What's happening? He burst into the cockpit to find Tina already at the controls, her face illuminated by the red warning lights. Nana was nowhere to be seen. We've been tracked, Tina explained tersely. Different ship, same problem. Someone who doesn't want you married into House Lawindham. How did they find us in hyperspace? Mark asked, strapping himself into the co-pilot seat. They didn't. They waited at our destination. Someone must have known about this safe house. Her expression darkened. We have a traitor somewhere. Another blast struck the ship, more powerful than those from the Pyraxis vessel. The lights flickered and several systems went offline. Weapon lock detected, the AI warned. Critical strike imminent. I can't shake them, Tina growled, her fingers flying over the controls. And I can't go outside this time. Their weapons are too powerful. So, what do we do? Mark asked, fighting back panic. Tina reached beneath her seat and pulled out a small metallic cylinder. You take this. What is it? The artifact I used against the Paraxis ship is just a focusing tool. The real power comes from this. She pressed the cylinder into his palm. It's a Nexit core, pure crystallized energy. My people use them to enhance our natural abilities. Mark stared at the cylinder. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. I don't understand. What am I supposed to do with it? The cookie of binding created a neural link between us, which means you might, emphasis on might, be able to access some Vindara abilities through me. She met his eyes, her green gaze intense. Squeeze it. Focus. Pull the energy into yourself. Are you insane? You just told me Nexit is lethal to humans. Only in its raw form. The cookie had a trace amount. This is refined, stabilized. It's our only chance. She grabbed his shoulders. You survived the cookie. You formed a neural link with my ship. You might be more compatible with our technologies than typical humans. Another blast rocked the ship, sending a shower of sparks cascading from the ceiling. Hull breach in sectors 2 and 4, the AI reported calmly. Life support failing. We're out of options, Mark, Tina urged. Try it, or we're both dead. Mark looked down at the cylinder, then back at Tina's face. Taking a deep breath, he closed his fist around the Nexit core and squeezed. Nothing happened. It's not working, he shouted as another blast struck the ship. Focus! Tina pressed her hand over his clenched fist. Feel the energy. Draw it into yourself. Mark closed his eyes, concentrating on the warm cylinder in his palm. For a moment, all he felt was the cool touch of Tina's hand over his. Then, slowly, he became aware of something else, a faint, tingling sensation spreading from the cylinder up his arm. That's it, Tina whispered. Pull it in. The tingling intensified, becoming a rush of heat that flooded up his arm and into his chest. Mark gasped as energy surged through his body, igniting every nerve ending. His eyes flew open and Tina jerked back in shock. Your eyes, she breathed. They're glowing. Mark could feel the change, not just in his vision, which had sharpened dramatically, but throughout his entire body. His muscles felt denser, stronger. His mind raced with crystal clarity. Even his hearing had intensified. He could detect the hum of the ship's systems beneath the blaring alarms. What do I do now? He asked, surprised by the resonant quality of his own voice. Tina pointed to the weapons console. Focus the energy through the ship's defense systems, like I did with the rifle, but through the ship instead. Mark placed his hands on the console, which lit up at his touch. The Nexit energy flowed from his body into the ship's systems, redirecting power to the weapons array. On the view screen, he could see the attacking vessel, a massive black warship bristling with cannons. Target their propulsion system, Tina instructed, moving to stand behind him. Visualize the energy striking their engines. Mark focused on the enemy ship's engines, channeling the Nexit energy through the Stellar Grace's weapons. A brilliant beam of purple-white light erupted from their ship, connecting directly with the warship's propulsion system. The effect was immediate. The enemy engines exploded in a spectacular burst of light and debris. Now their weapons, Tina shouted. Mark shifted his focus, directing another energy beam at the warship's primary cannon. The beam sliced through the weapon like a hot knife through butter, causing secondary explosions along the ship's hull. The enemy vessel, crippled and drifting, ceased fire. On the communications channel, panicked voices could be heard calling for emergency protocols. Mark released the weapons console, his hands trembling with residual energy. The glow faded from his eyes and he slumped back in his seat, suddenly exhausted. That was, he gasped. Impossible, Tina finished, staring at him in wonder. No human should be able to channel Nexit energy like that. Even among Vindara, that level of control takes years of training. Lucky me, Mark managed weakly before a wave of dizziness overtook him. I don't feel so good. Tina caught him as he started to slide from the chair. Energy backlash. Your body isn't used to channeling that much power. She helped him to his feet. Come on, you need to stabilize. She led him through the ship to what appeared to be a medical bay. The room was dominated by a large crystalline chamber filled with softly glowing blue liquid. In there, Tina said, guiding him toward the chamber. It's a regeneration tank. It will help your cellular structure rebalance after the Nexity exposure. Do I have to take off the clothes you just gave me? Mark asked, his vision beginning to blur. Despite the situation, Tina smiled. Yes, but I promise not to look. Much. When Mark regained consciousness, he was floating in the blue liquid. It felt oddly comfortable, warm and supportive, like being suspended in the world's most perfect bath. Through the transparent walls of the chamber, he could see Tina sitting nearby, studying a holographic display. She noticed his movement and approached the tank. How do you feel? Her voice came through clearly, as if the liquid conducted sound perfectly. Better, Mark replied, surprised to find he could speak normally despite being submerged. What is this stuff? Biothermal gel. It accelerates healing and stabilizes neural functions. She tapped a control panel and the liquid began to drain from the chamber. Your vital signs are normal. Well, normal for a human. The Nexit energy has mostly dissipated from your system. As the gel receded, Mark realized he was, indeed, naked. He quickly covered himself with his hands, feeling his face flush. Tina rolled her eyes and handed him a robe when the chamber opened. Nothing I haven't seen before, she remarked. Maybe not on a human, Mark retorted, wrapping the robe around himself. Fair point. Human males are differently proportioned. Mark wasn't sure if that was an insult or a compliment. Where's your grandmother? Sleeping. The excitement was too much for her. Tina hesitated. What you did back there, it shouldn't have been possible. Yet, here we are. Mark cinched the robe tighter. So what happens now? Now we change course. We can't risk another ambush. She turned away, but not before Mark caught a fleeting expression of concern on her face. And we need to figure out why you can handle Nexit energy. It could be important. Important how? Tina faced him again, her green eyes serious. There's an ancient prophecy among my people about an outsider who would wield the energy of Vindara and change the course of our civilization. Most consider it a myth, but she shook her head. It's probably nothing. A coincidence. Right, because my life wasn't complicated enough already. Mark ran a hand through his damp hair. So where are we going now? Somewhere no one will think to look for us. A small trading outpost on the edge of Vindara space. She gave him a once-over that made his skin tingle in a way that had nothing to do with Nexit energy. You'll need proper clothes and training. Training? If you can channel Nexit energy, you need to learn how to control it. Otherwise, you might accidentally blow up something important, like yourself. Mark followed her out of the medical bay, trying to ignore how the robe clung to his still damp skin. Are you offering to teach me? Someone has to, she replied over her shoulder. And since we're apparently stuck together thanks to my grandmother's meddling, it might as well be me. They reached the ship's galley where Tina began preparing some kind of meal. The smells were unfamiliar but enticing. You cook? Mark asked, surprised. I'm a diplomat. I've learned to appreciate many cultures' cuisines. She handed him a steaming cup of something that resembled coffee but smelled like cinnamon and sea salt. This will help restore your energy levels. Mark took a cautious sip. The flavor was complex, bitter and sweet and spicy all at once. It's good. High praise from a chef, Tina said dryly. Line cook, he corrected automatically, then paused. Wait, how did you know I was a chef? I said I worked at a diner, but I never specified my job. Tina froze, her back to him as she tended to something on the cooking surface. I must have assumed. Or, Mark said slowly, you can sense more through this Nexit bond than you let on. She turned to face him, her expression guarded. The link goes both ways, yes. I can sense things about you, Your past, your feelings, your thoughts. So you've been reading my mind? Mark set down the cup with more force than necessary, sloshing the liquid over the edge. Not reading it, glimpsing it. Fragments, impressions. She crossed her arms defensively. It's not something I can control, and for what it's worth, your mind is louder than most. Louder, more vivid, more. She seemed to search for the right word. Present. Mark wasn't sure if that was a compliment either. So what have you glimpsed exactly? A faint purple flush crept up Tina's cheeks. Nothing I'd care to repeat. Mark felt his own face heat up as he realized what she might have sensed from him, particularly his unfiltered reactions to her appearance. Great, he muttered. Just great. If it helps, Tina said, her voice softer than usual. The Nexit also enhances certain compatible feelings between linked individuals. Compatible feelings? Attraction, desire. She met his eyes directly. The cookie of binding isn't just about political alliances. It's meant to create bonds between compatible mates. Mark swallowed hard. So you're saying the cookie makes us want each other? It amplifies what's already there. Tina stepped closer, close enough that he could see the subtle variations in her purple skin, the flecks of gold in her green eyes. It doesn't create feelings that don't exist. The air between them seemed to crackle with energy, and not the Nexit kind. Mark became acutely aware of how little the robe concealed, how close she was standing, how her scent reminded him of thunderstorms and exotic spices. "Tina," he began, not sure what he was going to say. Before he could continue, the ship's AI announced, "Approaching designated coordinates, preparing for deceleration from hyperspace." The moment shattered. Tina stepped back, her professional demeanor returning like a mask sliding into place. "You should get dressed. There are clothes in your quarters that should fit now." "Right," Mark said, trying to ignore the sense of disappointment that washed over him. Back to survival mode. As he turned to leave, Tina called after him, "Mark?" He paused in the doorway. "Yes?" "What you did with the Nexit core, saving us from that warship, it was—" She seemed to struggle with the admission. Impressive. Coming from her, Mark suspected that was high praise indeed. As Mark headed back to his quarters, his mind raced with thoughts of Nexit energy, interstellar politics, and, most distractingly, Tina. The revelation that their connection went beyond an accidental engagement had shifted something between them. The air felt charged whenever they were in the same room, like the moment before lightning strikes. In his quarters, he found the clothes Tina had mentioned, a fitted black bodysuit similar to hers, but designed for a male physique, with subtle blue accents that seemed to shimmer when he moved. The material was unlike any fabric he'd encountered on Earth, lightweight yet substantial, conforming perfectly to his body. As he dressed, he caught sight of his reflection in a mirrored panel. The person staring back at him barely resembled the harried line cook who'd fled the Orion Syndicate's thugs mere days ago. His posture was straighter, his muscles more defined, effects of the Nexit energy still coursing through his system. Even his eyes seemed different, holding a subtle luminescence when the light hit them just right. "Who are you now?" he whispered to his reflection, which offered no answers. A soft chime indicated the ship had exited hyperspace. Through the viewport in his quarters, Mark watched as they approached what appeared to be an asteroid field, except the asteroids had been hollowed out and connected with transparent tubes and docking structures. Light glowed from windows carved into the rock, creating the impression of a makeshift city floating in the void. "Trading Outpost Zenith," announced the ship's AI. "Docking procedures initiated." Mark made his way back to the cockpit where Tina was guiding the Stellar Grace toward one of the larger asteroids. She glanced up as he entered, her gaze lingering on his new attire before returning to the controls. "It suits you," she said simply. "Thanks. It feels strange, but good strange." He settled into the co-pilot's seat. "So this is our hideout?" Zenith isn't officially in any jurisdiction. It's run by a coalition of independent traders from a dozen different species. Tina expertly maneuvered the ship into a docking bay carved from the asteroid's interior. No one asks questions here as long as you pay your docking fees. And you think we'll be safe? Safer than anywhere in Vindara space, at least for now. The ship settled onto the landing pad with a gentle thud, and Tina powered down the engines. We'll stay long enough to resupply and plan our next move. I also need to train you to control that Nexit energy before you accidentally level half the outpost. Is that likely? Mark asked, only half joking. Tina gave him a look that suggested it wasn't entirely implausible. Just try not to get emotional until I've taught you the basics. They left the ship after Tina had engaged what she described as every security protocol known to Vindara engineering. Nana had chosen to remain aboard, claiming she needed her beauty rest, though Mark suspected she was giving them time alone for reasons of her own. Zenith's interior was a riot of sights, sounds, and smells. The main concourse had been carved from the asteroid itself, with shops and businesses occupying caves and hollows along the walls. Beings of every description haggled at market stalls, shouted from doorways, and hurried along transparent walkways that crisscrossed the open central space. "Stay close," Tina murmured, taking Mark's arm. "Some of these traders would sell their own offspring for the right price, and you're quite the exotic commodity now." "Me? Exotic?" Mark scoffed, but kept pace with her swift stride. "A human who can channel Nexity? Trust me, there are collectors who would pay a fortune to dissect your brain. You really know how to make a guy feel special." Despite the warning, Mark found himself enjoying the bustling energy of the outpost. After years of the same routine at the diner, the sheer alienness of his surroundings was exhilarating. Creatures with too many limbs brushed past him. Holographic advertisements flickered in languages his translator couldn't decipher, and somewhere in the distance, what sounded like a cross between a jazz band and a pack of howling wolves created what presumably passed for music. Tina led him to a secluded section of the outpost, where the carved passageways narrowed and the crowds thinned. They stopped before a heavy door embedded with glowing crystals arranged in a pattern Mark couldn't decipher. "What is this place?" he asked, as Tina pressed her palm to one of the crystals. "A training facility, for those with special abilities." The door slid open, revealing a large circular chamber with a domed ceiling that displayed a perfect recreation of the space outside, stars and distant nebulae swirling above them. I called ahead. They're expecting us. The chamber was empty save for a series of mats on the floor and what appeared to be training equipment along the walls, though none of it resembled any gym equipment Mark had ever seen. "We have the facility to ourselves for the next 3 hours, Tina explained, moving to the center of the room. "Time to see what you're capable of." "I'm not sure I'm capable of anything without that Nexit core you gave me." Tina pulled a small cylinder from a pouch at her waist, identical to the one he'd used on the ship. "That's what we're going to find out." The training session began with basic exercises, learning to summon the Nexit energy, contain it within his body, and release it in controlled bursts rather than explosive waves. Mark proved to be a quick study, much to Tina's barely concealed surprise. "Most Vindara children take months to master that level of control," she remarked after he successfully manipulated a Nexit energy field to lift a training sphere from its pedestal. "Either you're a prodigy, or that cookie of binding did more than create a simple neural link." "Maybe I'm just motivated by the desire not to blow myself up," Mark replied, setting the sphere back down with careful precision. "Let's try something more advanced." Tina demonstrated a technique for extending the Nexit energy as a protective field, similar to the one she'd used to walk in space. Mark watched her movements, the graceful way she drew the energy from the core and wrapped it around herself like a second skin. "Your turn," she said, handing him the cylinder. Mark attempted to mimic her movements, drawing the energy into himself and then pushing it outward. The first attempt resulted in a flickering, unstable field that collapsed almost immediately. The second was stronger, but still insufficient. "You're thinking too mechanically," Tina critiqued. "The energy responds to intent, not just physical movement." "Easy for you to say. You've been doing this since childhood." "Here." Tina moved behind him, her body pressing against his back as she reached around to guide his arms. "Like this." Mark's concentration faltered at the feel of her against him, her breath warm on his neck. The Nexit energy responded to his spike of attraction, flaring briefly before dissipating completely. "Focus," Tina murmured, either unaware of or deliberately ignoring the effect she was having on him. Her hands moved to his waist, adjusting his stance. "Draw from your center. Feel the energy as an extension of yourself." Mark closed his eyes, trying to ignore the distracting heat of her touch. He concentrated on the Nexit core, pulling the energy into his body and then visualizing it expanding outward like a balloon inflating from his core. "That's it," Tina encouraged, stepping back slightly. "Hold it steady." Mark opened his eyes to find himself surrounded by a shimmering purple field that extended about 6 inches from his skin in all directions. He could feel it responding to his will, strengthening or thinning as he directed his focus to different areas. "I'm doing it," he said, amazed. The shield pulsed with his excitement, expanding momentarily before he brought it back under control. "Impressive," Tina acknowledged, circling him to examine the field from all angles. "Now, try to maintain it while I test its strength." Without warning, she struck the field with her fist. The impact sent a shockwave through the energy shield, but it held. Mark felt the blow as a pressure against his mind rather than his body. "Not bad," Tina said, a hint of respect in her voice. "Again." She continued testing the shield, gradually increasing the force of her strikes. Mark maintained the field, growing more confident with each successful defense. Then Tina swept her leg toward his ankles, not aiming at the shield but beneath it, where he hadn't extended the protection. Mark went down hard, losing his concentration and with it, the energy field. He landed on his back, looking up at Tina's triumphant expression. "Lesson 1, she said, offering her hand to help him up. "Never leave a vulnerability exposed." As he took her hand, Mark decided to apply that lesson immediately. Instead of allowing her to pull him up, he channeled a burst of Nexite energy through their joined hands, creating a momentary connection that knocked Tina off balance. With a quick pivot, he pulled her down beside him on the training mat. "Lesson learned," he said, grinning at her startled expression. For a moment, Tina looked shocked, then indignant, and then, unexpectedly, she laughed. The sound was musical and genuine, transforming her face from merely beautiful to breathtaking. "Well played," she admitted, making no move to rise from the mat. "You're a faster learner than I expected." "I had a good teacher," Mark replied, suddenly aware of how close they were lying. Her silver hair fanned out across the mat, her green eyes reflecting the starlight from the domed ceiling above. Tina's laughter faded, replaced by something more intense. The Nexit bond between them hummed with shared awareness. He could sense her quickened pulse, the heat rising in her skin, the conflict between desire and caution in her mind. "Mark," she began, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "I know," he said. "The Nexit. It amplifies what's already there." "Yes, but what if it's not just the Nexit?" His hand moved to her face, tracing the delicate line of her jaw. "What if some of this is real?" Tina's eyes darkened, her pupils dilating. "You don't understand the complications. My position, my responsibilities. I understand enough," Mark said, his voice low. I understand that we're both here now, and neither of us knows what tomorrow brings." The moment hung between them, taut with possibility. Then Tina closed the distance, her lips meeting his with a heat that had nothing to do with Nexit energy and everything to do with the tension that had been building between them since that first moment in the black market. The kiss deepened, igniting something primal and urgent. Mark could taste the sweetness of her mouth, feel the silken texture of her silver hair as his fingers tangled in it. Through the Nexit bond, he sensed her pleasure mirroring his own, creating a feedback loop of sensation that intensified with each heartbeat. Tina shifted, moving to straddle him on the training mat, her lithe body pressing against his through their fitted bodysuits. The material, designed to conduct energy, transferred every nuance of touch between them. Mark's hands found her waist, then moved higher, tracing the curve of her spine, the elegant arch of her neck. "This is unwise," Tina whispered against his mouth, even as her body told a different story. "Probably," Mark agreed, trailing kisses along the column of her throat. "Does that mean we should stop?" Instead of answering, Tina captured his mouth again, her kiss deeper, more demanding. Her hands explored his chest, his shoulders, learning the contours of his body as though mapping territory she intended to claim. The Nexit bond between them flared like a star going supernova, enhancing every sensation. Mark could feel not only his own desire but hers as well, a doubling of pleasure that threatened to overwhelm him. When her hips rocked against his, the dual awareness nearly pushed him over the edge. "Wait," he gasped, momentarily breaking the kiss. "The Nexit, it's too intense." Tina's eyes glowed with inner light, her control over her own abilities clearly affected by their shared passion. "We need to stabilize the bond, equalize the energy between us." Her hands framed his face, and Mark felt a subtle shift in the Nexit flow, from chaotic peaks and valleys to a more balanced, sustainable current. The overwhelming intensity receded, replaced by a deeper, richer connection. "Better?" she asked, her voice husky. "Different," he replied, drawing her back down to him, "but still extraordinary." Their exploration continued, hands seeking and finding, bodies moving together in an ancient dance made new by their unique connection. The bodysuits, designed with practicality in mind, yielded to specialized fastenings that Tina manipulated with practiced ease. "Diplomatic training?" Mark teased as she deftly unfastened a section of his suit. "Wouldn't you like to know?" she responded with a wicked smile that made his heart race. As more skin was revealed, his sun-deprived human paleness contrasting with her vibrant purple, the Nexit bond thrummed with increasing urgency. Mark rolled them over, reversing their positions, and was rewarded with a look of surprised approval from Tina. "Taking the initiative, Earthman?" she challenged, her green eyes alight with mischief and desire. "Just applying lesson 1, he replied, lowering his mouth to the newly exposed curve of her shoulder. "Never leave a vulnerability exposed." What followed was a communion of bodies and energies, physical pleasure enhanced by their empathic connection. Each touch, each caress, was experienced twice over, given and received simultaneously through the Nexit bond. Mark lost himself in the sensations, in the taste of her skin, in the way her silver hair spilled across the training mat like liquid moonlight. When they finally came together, the Nexit energy surged between them, creating a closed circuit of pleasure that built and built until it culminated in a release so profound it momentarily dimmed the lights in the training facility. Afterward, they lay tangled together beneath the projected stars, their breathing gradually slowing, the Nexit energy settling into a contented hum between them. "Well," Mark said finally, breaking the silence, "that wasn't in the training manual." Tina laughed, the sound vibrating pleasantly against his chest where her head rested. "No, but perhaps it should be. The harmonization of energies was exceptional. Is that what the kids are calling it these days?" She swatted his arm playfully, then propped herself up on one elbow to look at him more seriously. "This complicates things." "Things were already complicated," Mark pointed out, At least now they're complicated in a more enjoyable way. You don't understand the political implications of sleeping with your accidental fiancé? I think I'm getting the picture. Tina sighed, sitting up fully and beginning to readjust her bodysuit. The cookie of binding isn't just a quaint tradition, Mark. It's a legally recognized contract among my people. What just happened between us? She gestured to their disheveled state. In Vindara culture, this would be considered a consummation of our engagement. Mark's eyes widened. Are you saying we're actually married now? Not quite, but close enough that breaking the bond would require formal proceedings before the council. She finished securing her suit and began gathering her hair back into its elegant arrangement. And given your newfound ability with Nexit energy, they'll be even more reluctant to separate us. Would that be so terrible? Mark asked, sitting up beside her. Being stuck with me? Tina's expression softened. That's not the point. My life isn't my own, Mark. I have responsibilities to my house, to my people. I can't just follow my heart or other parts of my anatomy. So what happens now? Now, we continue your training. We figure out why you can channel Nexit energy when no other human has ever done so. And we find a way to deal with the houses that want you dead. She rose to her feet with fluid grace. One crisis at a time. Mark stood as well, adjusting his own bodysuit. And what about this? He gestured between them. Tina's professional mask slipped back into place, though her eyes still held a warmth that hadn't been there before. This was a necessary exploration of our Nexit bond, for training purposes. Right, Mark said, unable to suppress a grin. Training. Very important. Don't be smug, it doesn't suit you. But the corner of her mouth twitched upward, belying her stern tone. Admit it, Princess. You like me. I admit nothing. Tina headed toward the door but paused to look back at him over her shoulder. Although I will say that for a human line cook, you have unexpected talents. Mark's laugh followed her out of the training facility, echoing in the starlit chamber behind them. The stellar grace cut through hyperspace, its engines humming with renewed purpose. 3 weeks had transformed Mark Seidenspinner from a desperate line cook into something else entirely, something the Vindara High Council was still trying to classify in their ancient texts. Mark stood at the viewport, watching the streaks of light flash past. His reflection showed a man barely recognizable from the one who'd fled debt collectors on Caravan 5. His posture was straight, his eyes clear and confident. The Nexit energy that now flowed constantly through his system had physically enhanced him, added muscle definition, improved reflexes, sharpened senses. But the greater transformation was internal. Enjoying the view? Tina's voice came from behind him. Mark turned to find her leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed over her fitted purple and silver uniform. The formal attire of House Lawindham suited her, highlighting both her authority and her curves. Just thinking about how much has changed, he replied. Having second thoughts? About returning to Caravan 5? No. He closed the distance between them, hands settling naturally at her waist. About facing down every political faction that wants me dead? Maybe a few. Tina's green eyes sparkled with amusement. You'll do fine. You've mastered Nexity manipulation faster than anyone I've ever seen. I had a good teacher. Mark leaned in to kiss her, but was interrupted by the ship's AI. Approaching Caravan 5. Deceleration in 30 seconds. They broke apart, shifting instantly into the professional mode they'd practiced for this confrontation. Tina moved to the pilot's seat while Mark took his position at the weapons console. Where's Nana? He asked, scanning the various systems. In her quarters, preparing what she calls her grand entrance. Tina rolled her eyes, but her tone was affectionate. Despite her constant threats to murder her grandmother, the bond between them was obvious. The stellar grace dropped out of hyperspace, the familiar bulk of Caravan 5 appearing before them. The space station looked the same, a sprawling complex of interconnected modules, docking bays, and habitation rings. But this time, They weren't approaching as fugitives. "Opening communications," Tina announced, activating the holographic projector. The stern face of Station Commander Relic appeared before them, a grizzled Terran with cybernetic implants visible around his left eye. "House La Wyndham vessel, state your business." Tina straightened in her seat. "This is Tina La Wyndham, heir to the Vindara Consensus, requesting priority docking for diplomatic purposes." The commander's expression remained impassive. "We received notification of your arrival. Docking Bay Alpha 7 has been prepared for your delegation. The consortium representatives await you in the central hall." "Acknowledged." As the communication ended, Mark caught Tina's eye. "The consortium representatives? I thought we were just meeting your uncle." "Change of plans, apparently." Tina frowned. "Uncle Varix must have called in the full council." "Is that good or bad?" "Neither. It's political." She guided the ship toward the designated docking bay. "Remember the strategy. We present a united front. We emphasize the prophecy angle. It plays well with the traditionalists. And we demonstrate your abilities only if absolutely necessary." "Got it. Be charming but mysterious. The cosmic boyfriend from another dimension." "I never should have let you watch those Earth historical dramas." The ship docked with a gentle thud. As they prepared to disembark, Nana emerged from her quarters, resplendent in formal Vindara attire, a flowing gown of shimmering purple and silver, her white hair elaborately styled and adorned with crystalline ornaments that caught the light. "How do I look?" she asked, performing a small twirl. "Appropriately matriarchal?" "You look like you're enjoying this far too much," Tina replied. "Guilty as charged, dear." Nana patted Mark's cheek. "Ready to shake the foundations of Vindhara society, future grandson-in-law." Before Mark could respond, his personal communicator chimed, an unexpected sound, since no one on Caravan 5 should have had his contact information. The message was text only, no sender identified. "Cookie Man, the game is bigger than you know. Trust no one, especially not the family." "What is it?" Tina asked, noting his expression. Mark showed her the message. "Someone knows we're here." Tina's eyes narrowed. "Could be a trap, or a distraction, or a warning," Nana interjected, suddenly serious. "The houses have been playing these games for millennia, Mark. Everyone has an angle." "Including you?" Mark asked pointedly. Nana's smile returned, enigmatic as ever. "Especially me, dear. But at least my angle includes your continued survival. Not everyone at that meeting can say the same." With those ominous words hanging in the air, they exited the ship into the docking bay, where a formal escort awaited them, 6 security officers in Caravan 5 uniforms flanking a tall Vindhara male in diplomatic attire. "Heir La Wyndham," the diplomat greeted, bowing formally. "I am Sarix, adjutant to your uncle. The council awaits your presence in the central hall." "Lead on, adjutant," Tina replied with regal composure. As they followed their escort through the station corridors, Mark observed how differently they were treated compared to his last visit. Where once he'd been a fugitive scurrying through maintenance tunnels, now he walked openly, receiving curious and sometimes fearful glances from passers-by. "They're staring at you," Tina murmured. "They're staring at all of us," Mark replied. "It's not every day the heir to House La Wyndham parades through the station with her human consort and meddling grandmother." Nana chuckled. "Meddling? I prefer strategically interfering." Their route took them through increasingly opulent sections of the station, culminating in a massive atrium Mark had never seen before, clearly reserved for the station's elite. The central hall rose several stories, its transparent ceiling offering a breathtaking view of nearby stars. The floor was inlaid with precious metals forming intricate patterns, and the walls bore the emblems of various houses and factions. At the far end of the hall stood a semicircular table where 12 figures sat in ornate chairs, the High Council of the Vindara Consensus, with representatives from other species interspersed among them. In the center sat Uncle Varix, his formal attire marking him as the council leader. "This is quite the reception committee," Mark whispered. "Stay sharp," Tina warned. "Something's not right." As they approached the council table, Mark scanned the faces before him. Most were Vindhara, their purple skin ranging from deep violet to nearly lavender, but several other species were represented, including, he noted with surprise, an Orion who looked disturbingly familiar. "Welcome, Heir La Windham," Varix announced, his voice carrying throughout the hall. "The council has convened to address the matter of your unconventional binding." "Thank you for your consideration, Uncle," Tina replied formally. "May I present Mark Seidenspinner of Earth, my bonded consort according to the ancient rites." Murmurs rippled through the assembled council. Mark stepped forward and bowed, exactly as they'd practiced. "Your Excellencies," he greeted. "I'm honored to stand before you." Varric studied him with an inscrutable expression. The human who consumed the cookie of binding, who, according to reports, can channel Nexit energy despite his species' known incompatibility with our technologies. A fascinating development. One might even say, prophetic, Nana interjected smoothly. The murmurs intensified. Several council members exchanged significant glances. "The prophecy of the outside wielder is a myth," declared a severe-looking Vindara woman to Varix's right. "A children's tale." "Many myths have roots in reality, Counselor Mavis," Nana countered, "and I think we can all agree that a human channeling Nexit energy qualifies as extraordinary, regardless of ancient predictions." Varix raised a hand for silence. "We are not here to debate mythology. We are here to determine the validity of this binding and its implications for House Lewindam's alliances. Several houses have filed formal protests, including House Paraxis," interrupted a tall male Vindhara, rising from his seat, whose petition for alliance through binding was under active consideration when this human interfered. "I wouldn't call eating a cookie interference," Mark said, unable to help himself. The Pyraxis representative glared. "You knew exactly what you were doing." "Actually, I really didn't." "Enough," Varix commanded. "Regardless of intent, the binding ritual was performed and witnessed. Our laws are clear on this matter." "Laws can be reinterpreted," the Orion representative spoke up. And Mark finally placed him, the leader of the syndicate he'd owed money to, especially when outside influences corrupt traditional practices. "What exactly are you implying, Representative Krell?" Tina asked coolly. "Only that convenient coincidences deserve scrutiny," Krell replied with a predatory smile. "A human with gambling debts suddenly becomes bonded to the heir of House Lewindam. One might suspect alternative motives." Mark felt his temper flare, Nexit energy responding to his emotions by crackling just beneath his skin. Tina placed a restraining hand on his arm. "My grandmother's motives in offering the cookie of binding are her own," Tina said, "but the results are undeniable. Mark has demonstrated abilities that no human should possess, abilities that suggest the binding was not merely legitimate but destined." "Bold claims," Counselor Mavis said. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order." Before anyone could respond, the lights in the central hall flickered, then went out completely. Emergency illumination kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "What's happening?" Varix demanded. The station's commander tapped his communicator. "Security breach in multiple sectors. We have intruders." He looked up. alarm evident even through his cybernetic implants. The station is under attack. Chaos erupted in the central hall. Council members rose from their seats, security personnel rushed to protect the dignitaries, and communication devices chirped with urgent messages. "Tina!" Mark shouted over the commotion. "Where's Nana?" They both spun around, searching for the elderly Vindhara, but she had vanished in the confusion. "She was right beside us," Tina said, her voice tight with concern. A security officer approached them. "Air Lawindham, we need to move you to a secure location immediately." "Not without my grandmother," Tina insisted. "I'm afraid Elder Lawindham has been escorted to a different secure facility," the officer replied smoothly. "Protocol for multiple high-value targets." Mark and Tina exchanged glances. The message on Mark's communicator flashed in his mind. "Trust no one, especially not the family." "We'll follow you," Mark said to the officer, his hand casually moving to the Nexit core concealed in his jacket. "Lead the way." The officer guided them away from the central hall, through a series of corridors that grew progressively less populated. Mark's internal alarm bells were ringing at maximum volume. "Where exactly are you taking us?" Tina demanded as they entered a maintenance section. "Secure bunker in the lower levels," the officer replied without turning around. Mark activated the Nexit core, letting its energy flow into him without creating any visible effect. Through the bond, he sensed Tina doing the same. "Stop!" Mark commanded. The officer halted, turning slowly to face them. His hand moved toward his weapon. "Is there a problem?" "Yeah," Mark said, channeling Nexit energy to his fingertips. "You're not station security. The real officers have biorhythmic identifiers on their uniforms. Yours is a fake." The officer smiled, his expression turning sinister. Observant, but too late. He tapped his communicator and 6 armed figures emerged from concealed positions around them, a precisely laid ambush. "House Pyraxis sends its regards," the impostor said. "Nothing personal, just politics." "Actually," Mark replied, extending his hands to either side, "it feels pretty personal from where I'm standing." He released the Nexit energy he'd been gathering, not as the explosive burst they were likely expecting, but as a controlled wave that disabled the electronic components in their weapons and communications devices. The ambushers hesitated, confused by their malfunctioning equipment. That moment of uncertainty was all Tina needed. She launched herself at the nearest attacker, her Vindara combat training evident in every precise strike. 2 men went down before the others could react. Mark engaged the remaining attackers, Nexit energy enhancing his strength and speed. The training sessions on the asteroid outpost had transformed him from a desperate line cook into a formidable fighter. He dispatched one attacker with a Nexit-enhanced punch, then whirled to face another. The fake officer, seeing his plan collapsing, pulled a backup weapon, an old-fashioned blade that required no electronics. He lunged at Tina's exposed back while she dealt with another assailant. "Tina!" Mark shouted, channeling Nexit energy into a focused beam that he directed at the knife, superheating the metal instantly. The officer screamed, dropping the glowing blade as the handle melted in his grasp. Tina spun and delivered a precise strike to his throat, dropping him to the floor. Within moments, all 6 attackers were incapacitated. Mark and Tina stood back to back, breathing heavily but unharmed. "Nice moves, Chef," Tina said, the corner of her mouth quirking upward. "Line cook," Mark corrected automatically. "And you're not so bad yourself, Princess." Their moment of victory was short-lived. The station's alarm system blared overhead, and the maintenance corridor's lighting shifted to pulsing yellow, the signal for imminent compartment lockdown. "We need to find Nana," Tina said urgently. "This wasn't a random attack. Someone wanted to separate us." Mark knelt beside the fake officer, gripping his collar. "Where is Elder Lawindham?" The man coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. You're asking the wrong question. What's the right one, then? Who benefits? The man's eyes rolled back as he lost consciousness. Mark stood, his mind racing. We need to get back to the council chambers. Why there? Because I think I know who's behind this. Mark started down the corridor, Nexit energy still flowing through his system, enhancing his senses. The message was right. This is bigger than us, and it's coming from inside your family. They navigated the station's maintenance tunnels, avoiding security checkpoints and sealed sections. The station was in full lockdown mode, which paradoxically made movement easier for those who knew the hidden pathways, as Mark did from his days evading debt collectors. When they reached the access panel that would lead them back to the central hall, Mark paused. Whatever we find in there, remember the plan. United front. Tina nodded, her green eyes fierce with determination. United. Always. They emerged into the central hall to find it transformed into a war room. Council members huddled around holographic displays, security teams rushed between stations, and in the center of it all stood Uncle Varix, issuing commands like a military general rather than a diplomat. Want all access to levels 3 through 5 locked down, he was saying. No one enters or leaves until we've secured the VIPs. Uncle, Tina called out, striding forward with Mark at her side. Varric spun to face them, his expression cycling rapidly from surprise to relief to something harder to define. Tina, you're safe. We feared the worst when you disappeared with that security officer. That security officer was an assassin, Mark said. House Paraxis, according to him. Though I have my doubts. Varrix's eyes narrowed. What are you implying? Where's my grandmother? Tina demanded, cutting to the heart of the matter. I assumed she was with you, Varrix replied. She wasn't in the hall when the attack began. The Orion representative, Krell, approached with a smug expression. Perhaps the elderly lady wandered off. It happens at that age. Nana doesn't wander anywhere, Tina retorted. She's exactly where she intends to be, always. Which begs the question, Mark added, where would she intend to be during a coordinated attack on the station? A new voice answered from behind them. With the true power players, of course. They turned to find the Pyraxis representative, smiling coldly. Your grandmother is currently enjoying the hospitality of House Pyraxis aboard our flagship. She came quite willingly, I assure you. You're lying, Tina hissed. Am I? The Pyraxis representative activated a holographic projector on his wrist. An image appeared of Nana, seated comfortably in what appeared to be a luxurious cabin, sipping from a delicate cup. Recorded 5 minutes ago. What do you want? Mark demanded. Simple. The dissolution of your binding to Heir Lawindom, followed by her immediate binding to House Pyraxis as originally planned. Or what? Tina challenged. Or your grandmother experiences traditional Pyraxis hospitality, which becomes considerably less comfortable after the first day. Mark stepped forward, Nexit energy visibly crackling around his fingertips now. You're making 2 critical mistakes. First, you're assuming we believe anything you say. Second, you're assuming I won't reduce you to atoms where you stand. The Pyraxis representative's confidence wavered slightly at the display of power. Violence against a council representative would be the least of your concerns, Mark finished for him. He turned to address the entire council. This isn't about house politics or binding traditions. This is about power, raw, Nexit-fueled power that someone wants very badly. Varrix moved to intervene. This is hardly the time for— It's exactly the time, Mark interrupted. Because there is no attack on the station, is there? Just a manufactured crisis to separate us from Nana and force our hand. Murmurs spread through the assembled council members. Security officers exchanged uncertain glances. "Check your systems," Mark urged the station commander. "I'd bet my life there's no actual breach, just triggered alarms and falsified reports." The commander hesitated, then accessed a terminal. After a moment, his expression darkened. "He's right. The security breaches were simulated. The system logs show they originated from internal command codes." All eyes turned to Varix, whose composed exterior finally showed cracks. "Uncle?" Tina's voice held a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension. "You don't understand," Varix said, his tone hardening. "What's at stake here is bigger than any one house. The prophecy is real, but it was never about bringing unity. It was about power, absolute power that no single individual should possess." "The Nexit integration," Mark realized. "You knew I could channel it." "We suspected," Varix corrected. "When my sister reported a human had consumed the cookie of binding without ill effects, it confirmed our worst fears. The outside wielder had arrived." "Our worst fears," Tina repeated. "You mean your worst fears? What exactly are you afraid of, Uncle?" "Chaos. Disruption of the balance we've maintained for millennia." Varix's gaze fixed on Mark. "Humans are unpredictable, emotional, volatile. Giving one the power of Nexity manipulation is like handing a plasma cannon to a child." "And where is my grandmother really?" Tina demanded. A familiar voice answered from the entrance to the hall. "Right here, darling, and quite disappointed in your uncle." Nana strode into the chamber, flanked by a dozen purple-skinned warriors in armor bearing the Lawindham crest. She looked entirely unruffled, as if she'd just returned from a pleasant stroll rather than a supposed kidnapping. "Nana!" Tina rushed to embrace her grandmother. Did you really think I'd leave anything to chance?" Nana patted her cheek affectionately. "I've been playing this game since before your uncle was born. I knew he'd make his move today." Varix's face contorted with anger. "Security! Arrest them all!" Not a single officer moved. The station commander stepped forward instead. "I don't think so, Counselor. Falsifying security alerts is a serious offense, as is conspiracy to kidnap." "You don't understand what he can do," Varix insisted, pointing at Mark. "What he will become." Mark approached the council table slowly, Nexit energy swirling visibly around him now, not threatening but impossible to ignore. "What I'll become is up to me. Not you, not prophecy, not tradition. That's what really scares you, isn't it? Not that I'll abuse the power, but that I'll use it to change things." "Change can be dangerous," Varix insisted. "So can stagnation," Mark countered. He turned to address the entire council. "I didn't ask for this power. I didn't even know what that cookie meant when I ate it. But I'm here now, bonded to your air, with abilities none of us fully understand yet. You can fight that reality, or you can work with us to shape it into something beneficial for everyone." Silence fell over the central hall as council members exchanged glances, weighing their options. The Pyraxis representative looked as though he'd swallowed something bitter. Krell the Orion seemed calculating, reassessing the power dynamics. Finally, Counselor Mavis spoke. "The prophecy speaks not just of the outside wielder's power, but of his wisdom. Perhaps we should listen before we judge." Murmurs of agreement spread through the council. Varix, seeing his support eroding, slumped back in his chair. Mark moved to stand beside Tina and Nana, forming a united front as planned. "Here's what happens next," he said, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "House Lawindham will continue to honor all existing alliances, including trade agreements with houses Pyraxis and Orion. My binding to Heir Lawindham stands, recognized by Vindara law and, apparently, by Nexit itself." He channeled energy to his palm, creating a visible sphere of purple light. "In return for your cooperation, I offer this, my pledge to use these abilities in service of stability and prosperity for all, not just House Lawindham, not just the Vindhara, but everyone on this station and beyond." Nana stepped forward. As elder of House Lewindham, I formally recognize Mark Seidenspinner as bound consort to our heir, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. And I, Tina added, pledge House Lewindham's continued loyalty to the consensus under our new joint leadership. One by one, the council members nodded their acceptance. Even the Pyraxis representative, after a long moment of internal struggle, gave a curt nod. Then it's settled, Mark concluded. A new era begins, not through conflict, but through partnership. 3 months later, Mark stood on the observation deck of Caravan 5, watching ships arrive and depart from the bustling trade hub the station had become under their stewardship. Nexit enhanced trade routes had doubled commerce. Diplomatic relations with 3 previously hostile species had been established. Even the Orion Syndicate had been transformed into a legitimate security contractor. He sensed Tina's approach before he heard her, the Nexit bond between them having grown stronger with time and practice. "Admiring your kingdom?" she teased, slipping her arms around his waist from behind. "Our kingdom," he corrected, turning to face her. "Though I still think of myself as that line cook sometimes." "Really? Even with all this?" She gestured around them at the thriving station. "It helps keep me grounded." He pulled her closer. "Remind me why we can't just disappear for a weekend to that resort on Proxima Centauri?" "Because we have the trade delegation from Earth arriving tomorrow, the Nexit Cultivation Project review on Wednesday, and—" Mark silenced her with a kiss. "Rhetorical question, Princess." She smiled against his mouth. "You know, for a human who stumbled into interstellar politics by accident, you've taken to it remarkably well." "I had a good teacher. 2, actually." He glanced toward the entrance where Nana had appeared, looking pleased with herself as usual. "Am I interrupting?" she asked, clearly not caring if she was. "Not at all," Tina replied dryly. "We were just discussing our impossible schedule." "Well, cancel it all," Nana declared. "I've arranged a family retreat to the ancestral estate on Vindara Prime. The council can survive without you for a week." Mark exchanged surprised looks with Tina. "You're serious?" "Deadly serious, dear. Even galactic rulers need a vacation." Nana's eyes twinkled. "Besides, we need to start discussing the next generation of La Wyndham leadership." Tina groaned. "Grandmother, we've been through this. We're not ready for tiny feet pattering through the halls, for chubby little purple-tinged cheeks." Nana sighed dramatically. "Very well, but at least get some practice in during your vacation." She swept out as suddenly as she'd arrived, leaving Mark and Tina in amused silence. "She's incorrigible," Tina said finally. "She's also right." Mark led Tina to the viewport where they could see the stars stretching out to infinity. "About the vacation, I mean. Not necessarily the other part." "The baby part?" Tina raised an eyebrow. "You've been thinking about it too." It wasn't a question. The Nexit bond made hiding such thoughts nearly impossible. "I've considered it," Mark admitted, "though I have concerns about what happens when you mix human and Vindara genetics with a healthy dose of Nexity energy. Probably something spectacular," Tina mused, "and terrifying." Mark laughed, drawing her close again. "Just what the galaxy needs. Another Nexit-powered troublemaker." Tina rested her head against his chest, her voice thoughtful. "How did we get here, Mark? From a desperate line cook and a reluctant heir to this?" "You know exactly how," Mark replied, his tone mock serious. "Your grandmother gave me a cookie." Tina's laughter joined his, echoing across the observation deck as the stars shimmered beyond, promising endless possibilities for the unlikely pair who had changed the course of interstellar politics through the simple act of sharing a cookie. In her private chambers, Nana smiled as she watched them on her monitor, exactly as she had planned all those months ago when she'd spotted a desperate human fleeing from debt collectors. The ancient prophecy scroll unfurled on her desk glowed faintly with Nexit energy, the final lines now fully revealed. "And when the outside wielder and the purple heir unite, a new age of balance shall begin, born from the simplest of acts, the breaking of bread between worlds." She rolled up the scroll with satisfaction. Sometimes the best strategies were also the simplest, and sometimes the best way to change the universe was with a well-timed cookie.